And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Welcome to The Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast.
I'm so excited. Politics and paranormal. This is like the two things that I'm so obsessed with.
So good, it's scary.
Are you ready?
Welcome to The Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast. My name is Jeff Morey, and I'm your host. It's good to be back, and I'm excited to get back into discussing one of my passions, prepping. I've got a lot more topics I want to cover this year, and one that's been on my list for quite some time now is survival shelters. I think the common stereotype whenever someone who isn't a prepper or very preparedness-minded person thinks of us preppers is they imagine a person or a family who are kind of locked down in a buried bunker somewhere in the wilderness surrounded by guns, ammo, and food storage. And while this isn't too far from the truth sometimes, I think a lot of people don't realize that preppers aren't the only ones who build and utilize or plan on utilizing survival shelters. The U.S. government has thousands of bunkers and shelters. There are many cities and towns that have survival shelters, such as Hartford, New Haven, and Norwalk in Connecticut, Tampa and Jacksonville, Florida, and local government-owned tornado shelters inside Tornado Alley and states such as Mississippi and Oklahoma. There are also naturally formed caves and areas that have been established and authorized for use as shelters, such as Derrick Cave in Oregon. And the latest trend is for high-end survival condos that are designed and built underground by large developers for the wealthy and elite. I think it's safe to say, with all the insanity going on in the world today, that more and more people are seeing the geopolitical instability around the world and the potential for nuclear or conventional war, rioting and political unrest, and many other scenarios in which having a strong, safe, dependable survival shelter may save your life and the lives of your loved ones. This is something I've wanted to cover for a while, and probably one of the very first things that people who don't have a military or emergency services and management background kind of decide on a whim that they want to become preppers, look into, and set out to do. And in my opinion, it shouldn't be. While I 100% agree that really anyone can and potentially will benefit from a well-designed, well-placed, and most importantly, well-built survival shelter, I think too often people overlook starting with the basics, such as water, food, and survival planning, and jump right into how many guns they can stockpile and rushing out to dig a hole and drop a shipping container in it and call it a survival shelter. And while that's fine for the people who want to do it, today I have an expert who is a professional in building and placing survival shelters, joining me to discuss the ins and outs of getting the right survival shelter for you and your family that will be there when you need it most, and most importantly, do what it is designed to do. His name is Todd Stump, and he is the founder and president of USA Bunker Company, one of the world's leading manufacturers of top quality bunkers and survival shelters. want to welcome Todd Stump to the show. Welcome, Todd. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Before we dive into talking all about survival shelters and bunkers, would you first tell us a little bit about your background and what led you into starting USA Bunker Company?
Well, my background, that led me to bunkers. Started when I was 16. I started into welding, became a certified welder at 18. Did that up until I was 19. I joined the military. And going in the military, I became a paratrooper, joined the ranks of the 82nd Airborne, got to go see combat operations in the invasion of Iraq in '03. Got back from that, did a few more years in the military. And then after getting out of the military, I ended up joining law enforcement. I did 15 years working nights as a city cop. So everything between those two, really, I had a passion of helping people and just really seeing firsthand people being victims of, whether it's crimes, involving other people, or if it's, bad weather, some kind of event that happened, and seeing people that are just not prepared to deal with even just a small local incident that happens at their house. Same with the military. When we went over there in the invasion, the Iraqis were displaced, their government was gone, their power was shut off. Well, everything, the whole society was shut down, and they were solely dependent on what we could do to help them. They just weren't ready, but again, they really didn't have the capacity to prepare for something like that, being, the country that they were. And seeing that, I didn't want to be that person. I never wanted to be caught off guard. I didn't want to be unprepared. And if I can help somebody else be prepared and share my knowledge with them and my experience, that's what I want to do. And so here I am. Now that's what I do.
Was there a specific moment or event or anything that happened that was like, hey, I'm going to go and I'm going to start a survival shelter company? What was the spark that lit the match to that? Or
that one was I think I just had too much time to think and went down a rabbit hole. I did have some storm scares in my area, and I have family that doesn't have basements. So I started looking into, hey, maybe I should just build them a storm shelter. While all this was going down, I was doing this. It was kind of leading up to the 2012 Mayan apocalypse calendar thing, so that was a conversation. Oh, the world's going to end in 2012. And, this was going into 2012 when I started to think about this stuff. So a combination of the two. A buddy of mine I work with as a police officer, he's still with the company. He's still in the company with me today. We got it going together. He has talked about, hey, have you seen privately owned bomb shelters? And I'm thinking, well, that's a thing, private people are doing that. So I looked into it. There was only a handful of companies, maybe 2 or 3 companies out there. I think 1 or 2 were also very new. So I was intrigued. I was like, wow, that's a thing. People are actually, building real bomb shelters in their backyards. You heard about it in the 50s and 60s. I go, but here it is today. People are doing it. So I started looking into those, and I guess what I saw was, hey, I can do this better. They're lacking some things. I have a tactical mindset. When I look at something, I can see like, well, if I wanted to, sabotage this bunker, get in, this is what I would do. And, that bunker would be kind of easy to be able to do that to that person. So how do I make it better? So we decided to build one. So we gathered up some money and I built one. My parents, they had some property. I built it in their driveway behind their house. We built it. We did a great job. I did most all the welding, and we built everything on the inside, painted it, finished it up. It was a fully functional furniture floor, and we sold it on eBay. And I shared it on social media. Was talking about different things that we would do with the bunker to make them safer and more practical for everybody. And some people reached out and had us build one, so we formed a company.
So did your parents lose their bunker after you sold this one, or did you build them another bunker, or how did this go down?
No, they lost that bunker. We sold that one.
I hope they've gotten another bunker by this point.
Yeah, they got a little bit. So
okay, all right, yeah. True prepper never discloses everything. I understand. So for folks that this industry has just exploded, man, in the last decade or so. I think doomsday preppers and a lot of things like that have had a lot to do with it. But how would you gauge? There's so much going on in the world right now. Seems like we're at war with everybody these days, and the world's gone crazy. But how would you gauge the need in your mind for the average person or the average family? You know, how big of a need is this for a family to have a bunker these days?
I mean, I think it's a pretty big need, even if it's just for, a local event like a storm. Just having that peace of mind that you have somewhere to go. Everybody talks about, oh, you got a bunker. Oh, are you paranoid? Well, no, I got a bunker. I've got nothing to be afraid of. You have nowhere to go. That's kind of a scary thought. Imagine something happening. You have nowhere to keep you and your family safe. So yeah, I think the need is big, even if it's just some small safe room that you can harden up inside your house, or, if you can afford the bigger luxury bunkers like we do, whatever it is. Yeah, I definitely think the need is high.
Right. I agree 100%. The people you're dealing with, your customer base, what are the main threats that you're seeing that people are kind of preparing for? Is there specific things that they're kind of thinking about, or are they just, you kind of seeing, hey, I just want a bunker all in one bunker, or what's the mindset that you're kind of seeing from your customer base?
I think the biggest that I'm seeing is kind of a combination between, a nuclear World War III type scenario or an EMP where it just total collapse of society and civilization. Those are like the top two that everybody's just worried about. So,
well, for those who don't know, can you kind of break it down a little bit? Explain the difference between, I guess, a storm shelter, a bunker, and a survival shelter, and just kind of talk about the differences, because a lot of people don't know anything about this subject probably that are watching this right now. So,
right. So in a sense, a storm shelter and a bunker, they're both survival shelters because they're places you're going to, if it's a tornado or a nuclear event, you're going there for survival reasons and to stay safe. So, I mean, with the storm shelter, it's temporary. It's in and out. You might be there for, an hour or two, or if you're looking at a hurricane shelter, you could be there for a couple of days or whatnot. So they're very temporary. They're very primitive. You don't need to do much to them. There's not a lot of creature comforts you have to put into them because you're not occupying the space for a long period of time. Where you come down to a bunker where you're talking much longer term survival in the bunker, there's a lot to think about. It's not just so much of, well, how much food and water and ammo can I put in here? What about trash collection? You got to think about your waste. And then you also got to think about your mental capacity. Has anybody ever locked themselves in a room and tried to stay there for a week and still be sane? A lot of people don't think about that. It's easy to say, hey, I'm going to go in this bunker and be down there for 3 months. Are you really? You going to be okay?
Are they going to have the mental capacity to stand it? Absolutely.
Yes. Do you have the things in place to entertain your mind when that insanity starts? And we have a lot of experience with helping with entertainment. You tell anybody from the military, one thing we're good at is sitting around and waiting. So finding forms and ways to entertain yourself in those kind of situations is big. You got to have things to prepare for your mindset while you're in that bunker.
Right. We're talking about your military background and your service. Talk about that a little bit more into the construction side of things, like the threat analysis. I guess you don't want to give away all your trade secrets, but is there some different kind of drills you run, or what are some of the things that you kind of, I guess, test with the bunker that the average lay person wouldn't think about?
So what we test it, and what we're good at is with our military and law enforcement experience is, like I said, we're tactically mindset. We have a way of, hey, if I want to approach this building or this bunker and I want to sabotage it or breach it, how would I go about that? What would be at my disposal? What kind of tools would I have? What kind of team? And then, what are the weaknesses? What would I attack and how would I do it? And then I kind of switch past, well, if I was in the bunker, you know what I mean? How would I defend those critical components? Because I'm in the bunker, there's not a whole lot I can do outside unless I expose myself in one form or another. I want to try to keep everybody and myself safe in this bunker without exposing myself. And so we kind of sit around and we play that scenario game with that, as my buddy who's in the company with me, he was 12 years on the SWAT team. So he has a lot of experience with breaching buildings and doors and, hardened structures. So we kind of sit down and we bounce those things around. And it's not like a cookie cutter thing where, hey, we can do this with one bunker, let's do it with all. When our clients hire us, that's a big thing that they're getting with us, is not just, hey, we can design and build this bunker, but, we can build it to fit your landscape, your surroundings. We can make sure it's in the right spot. We can make sure your entry and your emergency exit and your air pipes are going in the right way. We'll make sure that you're set up to be able to protect and defend these things, and change that around in that situation to where someone else could just come in here and they'll just throw things together and call it a day, but they didn't really look at, hey, if someone were going to come here and try to do harm to you guys in this bunker, this is the path that they're going to want to take. This is probably the methods that they're going to want to go for, and this is how we're going to protect and prevent that. And we also do a lot of on-site training with tactical firearms, things like that with our clients.
Wow.
So we do bring that background and experience to our...
Talk about going above and beyond. You just said they're not all cookie cutter and you build them to specs per se, but can you talk a little bit about the build and construction of them? Again, I know you don't want to give away any trade secrets, but what's the general kind of materials you use? How deep in the ground? Guess there isn't a normal build, but what a build would look like.
So we build 3 different types of bunkers. When we first started building, we started building with steel corrugated pipe, 8-foot diameter, 10-foot diameter. That, if you want a true bomb shelter that you can bury deep in the ground for the lowest price point, those are the best bunkers to build. A lot of people can't get past the fact that they're in a round, corrugated container. You can't hide that. You can't really mask it that well. So some people just can't, I can't be in a pipe. I'll tell you what, they are roomy and they are comfortable. And you can put those, if it's 10-foot diameter, you want 10 foot of ground cover on top of it for max protection. That's pretty deep, especially if it's in your backyard. So we did a lot of those. Those are pretty low cost, efficient, and they're quick and easy to build. The second type of bunker that we build are just structural steel. It gives you all your square edges. So people like that because it feels just like a room in their house. Right. I'm used to corners and walls and not round pipes and everything. Those are probably the most expensive just because the amount of steel and labor and welding that goes into those. The corrugated steel pipe, a machine rolls and crimps those all together and seals them up, and there's not a whole lot of welding. But when we do the structural steel ones and the plating, there's a lot of customization that could go into those. They're not going to go as deep as the round ones, unless you just start spending a boatload of money to put more steel. So you want 4 to 6 feet. That's pretty comfortable. 3 feet's the minimum if you want that full protection of radiation, gamma radiation. But those, like I said, those are expensive. They're very heavy. You got to ship them. You got to crane them. But they're very nice. They're very customizable. And the third bunkers that we build, which is pretty much all we do now, I think we did our last steel bunker just a couple months ago out in Montana. And right now, we're booked out we build with ICF, insulated concrete form, all concrete. So the beauty with those is the sky's the limit. I guess your bank account is the limit. We can build those things with longer spans, bigger open spaces. Steel, we're stuck with what can fit on a truck and ship down the road. With these, we go to your site. What do you want? We can build it as wide, I think the wide spans we have now are, you can get like 22 feet and there's no support column, just big open spaces. You can do higher ceiling height. So if you really want to have that big open space feel, you're not really doing that with steel unless you can do 12 foot high on the steel, but your shipping costs are high. And concrete, I can go, how high do you want to go? Right. It's just about how we engineer the walls for those heights. So they have a much better lifespan than steel. Steel does have fatigue, stress in its life. After 60 years on the ground, you're going to start getting rot no matter how much you coat these things, paint them, coat them, install them with proper drainage and everything. Steel is just naturally going to find a way to corrode, and it's going to get stress fatigue. I'm not bashing the steel. We build them. I like them, but we're just finding that these custom concrete ones, they last longer. They're probably equivalent as far as the construction and install process to the steel in price, but they're a little more discreet. As when we do even the corrugated steel bunkers and the regular structural steel bunkers, it's shipping down a road. I mean, you can't hide it. People are looking at it. What is that? What is that? The crane's picking it up, swinging it around. There's only so many stories you can tell the neighbor before they start to pick up on it. When we put in these concrete bunkers, nobody knows what's going on. It just looks like a regular construction site. You'll see an excavator, you'll see a concrete truck, you'll see a boom pump truck, you'll see guys in and out. All the work is being done in the ground, so no one's seeing what's really being built. And it's a lot easier to hide
That's a big benefit all in itself, that people not knowing what you got, because everybody talks about a real SHTF situation. You don't want everybody on the block knowing that you got this. I mean, in my opinion, at least. So,
yeah. So I mean, the downside is your on-site construction is longer than just dropping a steel in. But again, the upside is nobody really knows what you're doing, and they don't ask questions because they're not seeing anything that they don't see at any other construction site. You know, if you see in a house or a building or something going up, you're seeing the exact same stuff going in and out. And it just, like I said, what you can do with those is awesome. We absolutely love them. Our clients love them. So that's pretty much right now all we do.
Talk a little bit about with some of the construction, because this is where people like me that haven't ever had a bunker but are super interested in them. I guess one of the biggest things is air filtration, sanitation, because you can't just have a porta potty in there and just leave it sitting in there, obviously. So how does all that work as far as sanitation, keeping it clean?
Yeah.
Air filtration. What if there's a chemical attack? The filtration to basically mask that from getting in. Can you talk about that a little bit and kind of explain to people how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to air filtration, there are things in the bunker that we kind of redesign and we build in-house ourselves, because what was already on the market that, hey, this is a bunker door, this is a bunker hatch. I didn't like them. You know, I didn't like them from the mindset of, well, you know, this is what I would do to it, or this is why I don't like it. I designed and we make our own in-house when it comes to the hatches, the doors, and our air delivery systems. So when it comes to the air filter itself, you know, I'm not going to try to reinvent the wheel and brand our own. I use what's best out there. And through our years, we found that the Swiss VA systems, air filtration, CBRN systems, they're the Cadillacs. You know, they're the best for what they do. They're great for these bunkers. They're expensive, but they're more affordable than if you're going with, you know, some big military contracting company that builds these that are starting at $60,000 for a system, opposed to, you know, $12,000 for a system. On those Swiss systems, and why we like them is the quality that they're built with, quality materials. They're very robust. They're very just well built, and they tested them under real conditions. So they ran a filter for a year and they hit it with multiple chemical attacks. And after a year, they tested the filter and they found that the filter was still good. It was still good for more attacks if they wanted to throw some more at it. So the chances that you're going to be in your bunker for a year getting hit with multiple attacks to where it can choke out your filter, I feel are very low. Yeah. So a system that can outperform what you need to do, I mean, that's where we have it. So we've used other air systems before, even some Israeli ones and some American made ones. Quality control and manufacturing just wasn't there. The Israeli ones are pretty good, but a lot of Chinese source parts manufactured in India. You know, we were running into issues with things that just weren't assembled right, falling apart, that kind of stuff. I'm not putting in. If I'm not going to put it in my bunker, I'm not going to put it in your bunker. So we got away from those companies, and right now that the Swiss air systems, that's all we use, just because we found those to be, you know.
What do you do as far as sanitation?
So
Is
sanitation,
it got like a septic system built in, or what's?
Yeah, so there's a few ways, and that's where we come in as more of a custom builder. So we kind of see where we're building this bunker, what our elevations are, what property we're working with, and then we kind of establish a better plan for sanitation. So worst case scenario, you got to pump your waste out. We use grinder pumps. They require electricity. So if you run out of power, we like to use a system called Nature's Head. It's a compost style toilet, very sealed. I mean, they're really nice. So if you lose power, you can't flush your toilet, you can't pump your waste out, you got to use one of those. So that's the downside. Another way we do it are deep holding tanks. So we put a holding tank, 500-600 gallons, however big, we determine it or they want it. And we put it outside the bunker. We install it just below grade of the bunker. And now we can gravity feed into that tank. And then that tank has its own grinder pump. So if that tank ever gets full of 600 gallons, then you can pump it and clear it all out. That's the upside to the grinder pump things. You can make little nozzles by your hatches. So if someone's trying to mess with your hatch, you can just empty the tank on them.
Right. I guess power, electricity, and water, all that's just pretty standard lines
Yeah.
that you
So
the household type stuff.
yeah, and some builds we have great elevations. Like, we're getting ready to do a project out west, up on a hillside, and they already have existing tanks on the property at the bottom of the hill, so we can just gravity feed everything down there. So you don't have to worry about running out of power. Everything's gravity fed. So how we manage that is just based on the build itself and the location and what we have to work with. So yeah, if we can gravity feed, well, we always want to go with gravity feed. So
Backup power, as far as backup power, because I guess you can't really mount a generator underground because you're going to have all that carbon monoxide.
So we do underground generators. The way that we design and put them in is it's a mechanical room that's attached to the bunker, and you have two steel airtight doors between you and that mechanical room. That mechanical room doesn't rely on any air from the main bunker. It has its own Swiss air filtration system and its own air intakes and its own air exhaust. We run CO2 detectors in there, and we have sensors on the two steel doors. And so how that operates is if either one of those two steel doors are on, that generator will not kick on. If the doors are shut and the generator is running and you open the door, after 30 seconds of that door being open, the generator will automatically shut down. So, the concept is if you're going to the mechanical room and the generator is running, you're going to open and you're going to close that door within 30 seconds. It'll stay running. So we have backups in place, redundancies. So that way, you have to purposely sabotage yourself.
Right.
To get
so it's basically its own self-contained unit in there. It has its own system and filtration and everything. So,
and we use only diesel because it's not an explosive like gasoline or propane. You know what I mean? So if you get a leak, big deal. It's not going to ignite, catch everybody on fire.
Yeah.
Diesels, we use a polishing system. So we hook up a polisher to the tank if they really want to prolong the life, and they can get 7-year shelf life out of a tank of diesel when you add it on a polisher plus your additives, your preservatives. So you can make it last. It's a lot safer. But yeah, we do the underground generators. But like I said, we just have a lot of extra steps for safety. Battery backups are another big thing, partnered with solar. So when you have a generator and you have battery backups, we do a lot of our bunker, the two, because the generator can kick on when your batteries get low. The generator's powering your bunker while recharging your batteries. When your batteries get up to power to get back from the bunker, generator kicks off, you switch back to battery power, and they just play off of each other. And typically our systems, the generator will kick on once every 2 or 3 days and run for maybe a 4 to 6 hour period depending on the battery load. So when you pair that with a 300 to 500 gallon fuel tank, you're talking months of piggybacking each other for power supply. And when it comes to solar, we always advise a lot of our clients, if you have little critical components that need a little bit of power and you're completely off grid, and you want that backup solar, to just use minimal solar panels outside to just run what's needed. And then the majority of your solar panels that you would want to run off, keep stored in your bunker. So whatever event happens that makes you use your bunker could destroy your solar panels outside.
Absolutely, yeah.
And after, a few days or a week, whatever you deem it's safe to come out, you can come out and you can start placing panels out and plug them in and, start supplementing your power load off of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have no way to protect them outside.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. So let's get into cost a little bit here for anybody that might be interested. I guess first, how do you price these things, and what's the cost from the smallest budget little unit, little storm shelter or family unit, to all the way up to a doomsday bunker? Is it by the square foot, or how do you cost this out?
It's a loaded question. So for estimates, we go with a square footage, but there's so many factors that come into play when dealing with the ICF. When we start expanding the scope of the building's footprint, we start adding support walls. So those can add up costs. Your square footage price starts to go up. So, I would say our average is between $800 to $1,000 a square foot for what we build now. So when we started the company, we were putting out small bunkers, $12 or $15 to $20,000, shipping them out and then going and installing them for a little bit more. Everything we do now, we're probably, our minimums, we're probably 3, maybe 400,000 is where we start. Our average project is $1 million to $2 million. So we started with the smaller bunkers, and now, like I said, everybody reaches out to us is looking for the big projects. So we just try to focus on those. We're a quality over quantity builder, so I want to make sure you're getting the best your money can buy and keeping you safe. So
I guess that's best case scenario for USA Bunker anyway, that you you kind of graduated into the big boy builds. All right. So let's go scenario here. Let's talk a real world situation that we've had, say we've had a nuclear attack or a massive EMP attack or something, and you got a family, you build them a bunker, they got to go seek shelter. Realistically, how long can a family survive with a fully outfitted bunker? How long can they survive in their bunker if they have to? That's a loaded question too.
I mean, it really comes down to how much can you mentally stand to be inside that space.
Right.
You know, I can have 2-3 years worth of food and water and backups and all this stuff, but I might last 2 weeks before I'm like, get me out of here. You know, not me personally. I've been through training and scenarios and experiences where I've been stuck in places, especially in the military is good at just leaving in places. To where I can deal with it, but there's not a lot of people can. But if you have the right budget, you can easily, a year would be a cakewalk with the right budget.
Gotcha.
So I think our average, well, one project we're doing right now, we're setting up 16 people for 1 year, but I think our average that most people get set up for is probably 4 to 6 months is what they're looking at.
Yeah. Well, I guess if it's a situation that's that bad, you probably ain't going to be too good if it's got to be in your bunker for a year at that point anyway. All right, Todd, can you talk about some of your favorite builds? I really want to hear about some of the projects that you've done that you enjoyed the most, and I guess some of the biggest and most extravagant builds.
Yeah, that's always a fun one. So I would say the one that stands out in my mind the most was one we did years ago out in Colorado, up in the mountains. And this guy had a beautiful property up in the mountains. Everything was off grid. You know, there was nothing up there, just nice homes. But his house itself was fortified. It was all brick and mortar house. He had steel shutters that go down over every door and window. You know, he had the Tesla solar roof shingles, all the Tesla house batteries, cistern tanks, backup generators. And then, you know, we get up there, he goes, hey, I want to put a bunker outside. I go, so your bunker needs a bunker? Is that what we're getting at here? I'm happy to accommodate you with that. So this one we did out of structural steel. We built it at our shop in Akron, Ohio. And we had to build it in small sections because there was no way we were getting a full-size bunker up these mountain roads.
I was getting ready to say, based on what I'm a truck driver. So I was getting ready to say, based on what you've told me, that doesn't sound like a fun project trying to get some of that equipment up.
Talking
there.
Probably close to 18% grade if I had to guess at some of the steep parts. But it was up there. It was off the beaten path. But we got a big crane up there. That was the biggest piece of equipment we got up there. Is we got this crane up there. Now we're pushing coming up to wintertime. I mean, we're end of October when we finally get this build going, and we're just hoping and praying that the snow stays away, because if it snows where we're at, project is shut down, equipment is stuck up there. There's no getting up or down that mountain with those roads when it snows. So that's what they were. The guys we were working with, some contractors that were local, we had to bring them in just because of their knowledge of the mountains and building and digging inside these mountains. They were just adamant. You know, you could see the worry on them every day checking the weather, because those snowstorms will just roll in on you, right away.
Right. So
the bunkers show up. We're getting them up there truck by truck. We're backing them in. One truck shows up and he's like, I'm not going up that hill. And we're just like, we need you to go up that hill. He just was adamant. He wasn't going up that hill. I don't want to burn up my transmission, just going on. So I'm thinking, oh crap, man, how are we going to get this last part of the bunker up the hill? So our welder, he had a big truck up there, his rig. So he was like, screw it, man, I'll come down there and get it. So he brought his truck down there, and this guy let him grab his trailer. So we finally got it up there, got everything put into place, started getting everything welded together. Once we got everything set, we got that crane set, we got it out of there, we got the bunker set. That night, snowstorm rolled in, shake down. And I mean, but everybody was thrilled because all the heavy equipment,
everything was there. Yeah.
It was gone now. You know what I mean? So everything that needed to be off of that mountainside before any weather came in, we got it off, less than 12 hours prior to that snowstorm coming in. So that was always cool. Yeah, the project did shut down. We didn't get backfilled till the following spring, but there was still plenty of work to do on the property with everything. But it was cool, great views. Of just all the mountains everywhere you look. We're 10,000 feet up. Nobody got hurt. Everything got put in place just as it needed to be. And so we had a few things like with the truck not wanting to go up there. I think every job you run into something where you have to problem solve. That's a big part of being in this business is problem solving, because there's a lot of things that are unconventional. Someone has an issue and it's like, wow, that's uncommon. Let me think about that and we'll solve this problem. We do a lot of problem solving. So that one I think stands in my head. Not a huge bunker, but it was just the process of putting that bunker in.
I was going to ask you, based on what you told me about the guy, if this was like a 5,000 square foot bunker or a 10,000 square foot bunker or something like that.
Well, it was his getaway property. He didn't even live there. You know what I mean? It's just, yeah. Wow. So that was his bug out property. It was something. But yeah, I really enjoyed that build. But I did a second build for him in South America too. So he's got a couple. And then I would say one we're finishing up now, I think, is one of my favorites because it's the first that we did a bunker with a building integrated on top of it. And everybody's like, oh, so it's a basement. Oh, nice. I'm like, I mean, yes, it's a basement, but it has 4 feet of ground cover between its deck and the building on top. But yeah, so we built the walls. We built these thick, heavy footers because the walls for the bunker went all the way up to the surface because they support as the footers for the building on top. And so between the deck of the building is concrete slab and the deck of the bunker, we had a 4-foot void that we filled in with backfill and then the concrete rest. So it's a thick, hardened bunker. And they're getting ready to start the upper building on it now. So that one's cool. The entrance is going to be hidden in like a little garage off on the side. There's an emergency exit that's hidden into the deck in the back. It pops up through the deck. So that one's cool. Just for the, it's 1,000 square foot bunker. It's definitely on the medium size to what we do. Like I said, I like that one just because, hey, we're putting this whole house, we're integrating this house with the bunker. Everything kind of, they all connect together, but you can shut off all utilities and everything to the house from the bunker, so that way you can just utilize. Very cool. The bunker can just utilize everything, and you cut off access to the rest. So that one's cool, and I'm excited. I think we'll have that one wrapped up later this summer, based on progress. So,
all right, for little guys like me, one income family, that just want to pop something outside. I know that's not your forte and what you do these days, but can you give any advice to the self-made preppers like me? Because my dream personally is I want a concrete geodesic dome. Mm-hmm. That's been what I live on the side of a mountain myself. And that's been my dream, is to kind of fabricate some kind of, I don't even know how big, but some kind of like concrete geodesic dome. I guess the common thing is for everybody to go and get a shipping container these days and drop it in the ground. But what advice can you give to the rest of us? Small scale, just want something, just to have something for a little bit of peace of mind. Where do we start? So, what materials? What do you think?
So I guess you're looking for just a storm shelter or an actual bunker, because a bunker you're going to want to mitigate your exposure to gamma radiation and EMP wavelengths. And that all comes into your ground cover and the way you design your entryways to mitigate those things. So people use shipping containers. That's what I looked into. We were going to start the company with shipping containers, and we consulted with a couple engineers we brought on board, and they were just no on the shipping containers. Yes, you can, but the amount of supports and work you have to do with it, you might as well just build something from the ground up. So we totally got away from shipping containers, and the engineers led us to the corrugated steel pipe, and your most low cost, strongest, best method is to build with this material. So that's what we did. So if you want a true bunker and you want it on a budget and you're a little bit of a DIY person yourself, building out of steel corrugated pipe, that's the way to go. I absolutely love those bunkers just because the cost to the strength of it. It's a very, very strong, very robust bunker, and it's cost that much. It's you can't beat it. Yeah, and a lot of those you can find plants that provide those pipes, and you don't have to tell them it's for a bunker, but you can call them and tell them, hey, can you put bulkheads on it? And they'll weld the bulkheads on the end. And then you could just do a little welding yourself, or if you have a buddy you can weld, you can kind of wrap up the rest, and you can build them just out of 6 foot diameter pipe. But still plenty of space to get in there, hide away. Now, is it somewhere I want to be down there for weeks on end? No. But if there was a nuclear detonation or some kind of nuclear fallout coming, absolutely, that's where you'd want to be, especially on a budget. A lot of that, the 10-foot diameter pipe, a lot of that stuff you can find from these suppliers at like $320 a foot, a linear foot, and cheaper for the smaller diameter. But yeah, if you were going to build something serious on a budget, I would say to start there. That's the simplest. You can't go wrong with it. Good
advice. I know you can get a lot of ready-made stuff. I was delivering to a Home Depot one day, and I seen somebody ordered a steel storm shelter. It's Home Depot sells them. I was like, what? Yeah,
Home Depot they have some little prefab steel ones, and they have those 2-piece concrete storm shelters that you can put in. Yeah, that kind of have a little slant that sticks out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And those you can get, $10, $12, $15,000 and put them in. Now, mind you, you're not going to really have the ground cover you need to be a true fallout shelter and protect you from those dangers. But a storm, possibly security threats, you can do okay in.
Yeah, and of course you're not working with any kind of air filtration or sanitation. Right. It's just basically just a safe room, more or less, at that point. So,
yep.
Anyway, well, Todd, what do you like to do when you're free time, man? When you're not busy building bunkers and have all these amazing contraptions?
Oh, I guess what I like to do is I do swimming pools here in Ohio. I own a company that we do custom pools or fiberglass pools. So we do some outdoor living spaces in between bunkers. I like to do shooting. I like to do training. I run a nonprofit, and we do training for churches for free and some schools. We teach them active shooter drills, stop the bleed drills. We donate bleed stop kits to them and tourniquets and all that stuff. So got a great crew of guys that we do all that training. Same guys that we'll take with us to a client and train them as well on all that stuff. Because surviving in a bunker is more than just being in a bunker. It's knowing how to use your firearms and
absolutely,
and how to patch up bullet holes. So those are things I like to do in my free time. I like to hang out with my family. Kids are all older, so they don't really hang out much, but my wife, we still hang out, watch our shows together. So those are, and boating. Well, Ohio weather sucks for most of the time, but when you do have those nice stretches of warm weather, I love to be out on my boat.
Well, how can people contact you, get a hold of USA Bunker?
So easy. If you want to get a hold of me direct, just use my emails, Todd, TODD, @usabunker.com, or you can get on our website. There's contact forms and phone numbers. Get on there and get a hold of us and start your project. That's what you want to do.
There you go. Todd's your guy if you need a custom built bunker. Todd, thanks for your time, brother. I appreciate it. And
absolutely.
Thank you for your service to our country and for the nonprofit and for all the great things you're doing. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal podcast. Your source for real news and analysis on politics, prepping, paranormal, conspiracy theories, and the volatile state of the world we live in. Tune in next week and every week for a new episode, and stay safe, stay healthy, and stay vigilant.